Welcome. Thank you all for being here. I'm so excited. Before we begin, I just want to say a special thanks to the Foundry for hosting this event tonight. And thank you to our funders. I'm going to list them now. Ben & Jerry's Foundation, Borealis Philanthropies Black-Led Movement Fund, Borealis Philanthropies Communities Transforming Policing Fund, Haymarket People's Fund, the Massachusetts Cultural Council, Massachusetts Humanities Council, New England War Tax Resistance, the Navigation Fund, Hunter College, and Goldsmiths University of London. So thank you. They're the reasons why we can be here today and why everything is free. And another very, very special thank you. The reason why, even though we're a little bit behind, but everything is here and put in place is because of all of our event sponsors who've helped us make this space as welcoming and beautiful as it is. So special thanks to the Black Alliance for Peace, Cambridge Community Television, Cambridge Housing Justice Coalition, Cambridge Residents Alliance, Defund Somerville Police Department, Democracy on the Front Lines Fund, Jewish Voice for Peace, NAACP Mystic Valley, and Surge Boston's Prison Abolition and Camberville working groups. So thank you all. To begin, I have to acknowledge this space. The land that we're gathered on, what is now called Cambridge, Massachusetts, is the ancestral and ongoing home of the Massachusetts people. We honor their past, present, and emerging leaders. And yes, they still exist. The Mashpee Wampanoag, members of the largest Massachusetts people, are federally recognized with a reservation in Mashpee and Taunton, and there are over 3,000 enrolled citizens. This land is stolen. Acknowledging that is not ritual, it's grounding. And I must acknowledge the time. Today is May 15th, 2025. It's the 77th anniversary of the Nakba, the catastrophe. In 1948, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were violently displaced from their homes and the land to make place for the Israeli state. Most of the people in Gaza now are descendants of refugees who were expelled from other parts, from all throughout Palestine during the Nakba. They still have the right to return to their ancestral homes under international law. Instead, the people in Gaza are being starved by a blockade. 2 million Palestinians are starving right now, and this could not happen without the support of the United States, our tax dollars. Yes, the Palestinians still exist, and they are still fighting to live, to stay, and to return. These struggles are not separate, they're entangled. The colonization of indigenous land, the violent displacement of Palestinians, the enslavement and ongoing dispossession of African-descended people are all rooted in settler colonialism, extractive and exploitative racial capitalism, and violence. These forces continue to shape our lives today, from occupation and surveillance to gentrification and forced migration. Yet, across all these histories is a shared thread of resistance and survival. Black people, indigenous people, Palestinian people, yes, we still exist. We remember, we resist, we refuse to be erased. And as we gather for the premiere of Where Do Black Men Live, we're not just exploring where we are, we're affirming our right to be and to be here. This film is an act of presence and resistance. So, my name is Stephanie Guirand. Or Stephanie Guirand. I was born in Haiti and migrated to the United States as a child. Thanks to my father, Jean-Baptiste Guirand, I had a visa. But after a lawyer stole my mother's money, we were left undocumented. I grew up here in Cambridge, experiencing poverty, housing insecurity, and even childhood homelessness. Eventually, we found stability in public housing, living as a mixed immigration status household for decades. These experiences shaped my commitment to community, to activism, and to housing justice. Through a generous fellowship, and with the encouragement from Dr. Jennifer Yanko, a friend and one of my dissertation advisors, Professor Larry Blum, Dr. Susan Wrangler, I pursued graduate study at Goldsmiths University of London, a place known for its radical sociology. And there, my research began with a simple question: where do Black men live? In a time marked by mass incarceration, COVID-19, and calls for racial justice, I explored how low-income African-descended men come to live where they do. My argument is that it's by design, by policy design. Using an abolitionist framework, specifically prison industrial complex abolition, I examined how policies and systems designate who is deserving of support and who is excluded. What emerged is a stark picture of deep entanglements between carceral and welfare institutions. These systems work together to keep many Black men in a state of housing transience, moving constantly and invisibly to avoid incarceration while seeking shelter, even here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, one of the most affluent places in the world. This insight, how carceral systems actively shape housing instability, may be this project's biggest contribution. Where Do Black Men Live is a case study that took place right here in Cambridge between 2021 and 2022 during the COVID-19 pandemic and the global uprising sparked by the murder of George Floyd. In response to the times, some of us came together to form the Black Response, a local movement for non-carceral and public safety and care. From that effort came Cambridge Heart and the Community Safety Department. I embedded my research within this activist work, conducting 41 in-depth interviews with Black men here in Cambridge, collecting documents and field notes, and participating in the Cambridge Housing Justice Coalition, a group I helped to catalyze. It began as the Unhoused/Housing Justice, or the Unhousing Working Group, to dig into connections between policing and housing injustice. That work has fueled campaigns like the push for the municipal voucher program and the need for a community land trust, and is documented in a chapter of my dissertation called The Burden on Community. I want to be clear, I am not a Black man, and I don't claim to speak for them. But as a Black woman, my life is deeply entangled with theirs. My father, my brothers, my partner, many friends and mentors are Black men, and I'm connected to Black men through family, love, friendship, and community. This project is rooted in care, not extraction. Following the guidance of Linda Tuhaiwa Smith in Indigenous methodologies, I am committed to returning the stories and wisdom I gathered back to the community in a non-alien form, that is to say, in a meaningful and accessible way. Thus, with the support of all of the members of the Black Response, namely Virginia, Lorenzo, Andy, Ilham started out with me. And that's Andy right there. Mozo, Symphony, Rayanne, Barbara, and special thanks to some former members, Dara, Ayana, Queen Cheyenne. We have made this film to give these stories back to all of you. And that's why we're here today. The film you're about to see, Where Do Black Men Live, was co-written by myself, Gift Tapiwa Marovatsanga, and Joy Wrolson. Oh, Joy is here somewhere. Hi, Joy.
Hey, Joy.
And directed by my good friend, Corinne Spencer, who's here. It draws from the real words of the men I interviewed, following a verbatim theater tradition, similar to the vagina monologues. We've anonymized the narratives to protect the privacy of our participants to the best of our ability. So, without further ado, I welcome you to the world premiere of Where Do Black Men Live?
Hello everyone, my name is Mozo. I'm a member of the Black Response Core team. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching Where Do Black Men Live. I hope you found meaning in the stories these men so generously shared, and that their experiences have sparked reflection and insight. Now we have the privilege of deepening that conversation with a panel of brilliant thinkers and practitioners whose work help us better understand the systems that shape housing, exclusion, and resistance. Please join me in welcoming our panelists. Actor in the film, Emmanuel Okeke. From Harvard University, Professor Suzanne Sandra Smith. Professor Spencer Piston from Boston University. Professor Chenjerai Kumanika from New York University. Following the panelists' remarks, we'll open the floor for Q&A. So to begin, I'd like to invite Emmanuel Okeke to share his reflection.
How's everybody doing tonight? Okay. So, did y'all enjoy the film? Yeah. I just want to say it's an honor just being here, just being a part of the process. I just want to give a shout out to Gift, Joy, Virginia, Corinne, everybody in the Black Response, just for everything that they do, you know, trying to make the world a better place with their goals, their mission statement. It's just truly an honor. My name is Emmanuel Okeke. I'm from Newark, New Jersey. I've been acting for over 5 years, and this movie just meant a lot to me because there was a point in my life where I was homeless. I was living in Miami with 2 of my friends. Imagine 3 guys with luggage living in the coop. Because we all wanted to find clarity, purpose. We had ups and downs. We went to the gym just to take showers. You know, we tried yoga, meditating, just to tap into that spiritual awakening, just to make sure that what we was doing was for the right cause. And I just want to give a shout out to myself for playing Xavier, who's just an amazing, amazing person. His courage, his resilience. Thank you. His courage and resilience is so top tier. Like, I respected him because he knew what he wanted to do. Without a shadow of a doubt. He knew it. He wasn't gonna let no one or nothing stop him to achieving his goal. Like, for me, I'm not gonna lie, it took me a little minute to really say to myself, you know what, I'm gonna go for it. You know, being the oldest of 3 in an African household, Nigerian to be exact. The status quo is to be either a doctor, a lawyer, in business or tech, and there's nothing wrong with that, but anything outside of that, it's far-fetched to them. At first I didn't understand that, but now I get it. To them, the American dream was to come home and give back. I was fortunate enough to be the American dream because I was raised in Jersey, so the possibilities of success were endless for me. So when I was at first scared to be an actor, to be a creator, to be an entertainer, it was more so to make my parents happy. I didn't want to be a disappointment, especially being the first child where all the pressure's on you. But it came to a point, just like Xavier, where he had enough. Like, he loved his family. But at the end of the day, he's his own man, he's his own person, he has his own goals. So I had to follow suit. No matter how scary it was, you know, for him, he did it all by himself. I commend that. For me, I did it for myself, but I didn't do it by myself. I was able to have friends with me, even though they didn't follow the same path I was going, but they knew the mission of finding better, doing better, becoming better. So the fact that I was able to be a part of this film, just to play this character, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it was kind of difficult because even though I'm grateful for everything that happened to me in Miami, there was many lows. Lows that really broke me, shattered me, but I knew that with that happening, it was gonna make me who I am now. If I didn't leave Jersey for Miami for those 3 years, I wouldn't be standing here right now. So I'm thankful for everything. Thankful for being homeless. That's why that last monologue just really meant a lot to me, because I really had to tap into my personal experiences for Xavion. It's the fact that I get a chance to be a voice for the voiceless. And also, I want to give a shout out to Makai Brown, who played Zion, is in the building. Brother man, stand up for me. Don't be nervous. Nah, he did an amazing job just to be a part of the cast. Everybody put their blood, sweat, and tears. I just want to truly say thank you to the Black response, everything that they've done. You know, we was able to do this film in 5 days. With rehearsals, you know, practice. We tried so many techniques to get into exposing our inner thoughts to become these characters. Us getting comfortable with each other, comfortable with the characters and the storyline, and just how fully detailed and thought-provoking this conversation is. It's not just about Black men, it's about everybody. You know, and we live in a society that tells us that it's not okay to express yourself. You know, and the places like, you know, the Foundry, where everyone is able to be themselves and express how they feel, people really don't understand how powerful words are and how powerful it is just to have someone to listen to you. We all go through struggles. We all ain't perfect. But there's a chance for you to talk to somebody about your problems. Definitely take that opportunity before it's too late. And I also want to give a moment of silence for those who wasn't able to talk to that someone. Can we please do that? Thank you for that. I just want to say, like I said before, it's an honor being here. I'm so glad you guys enjoyed the movie. I'm so honored to be a part of it. And just the fact that us as actors and creatives, we're using our talents to tell stories. And I'm going to leave with this quote here. I remember I was talking to this director, and he told me verbatim that, Emmanuel, you got a gift and a face that could tell stories visually. I said, man, wow. And it's just the proof of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up, Professor Suzanne Sandra Smith.
Actually, it's Spencer. She's next.
Oh, okay. Professor Spencer Piston.
We live in a society where property is key. Who gets to own property and who's a threat to others' property rights is a central question around which so much of the American political and social order revolves. The criminalization of the people we saw in this film is deeply tied to their right to be in a certain space or their illegitimacy of being in certain spaces. And of course, race is super tied to property as well. Dr. Guirand started by talking about the stolen land that we are on. And part of that theft is about turning land into private property that some people get to own and others can occupy, can exist on, only as a criminal act. In that setting, what incredible courage, as you just said, and resilience does it take merely to exist, merely to survive, and in some cases, as we saw, even to thrive. I also want to talk about the hypervisibility of the black man in discussions of crime, going back certainly to the days of slavery, to Jim Crow, the lynch mobs, and the mythology of the rape of the white woman by the black man. In the 1990s, the super predator, the urban black male, supposedly a feral being without remorse, often linked to political protest, criminalized, turned into a form of violence, of lawlessness, of disobedience. And juxtaposed with that hypervisibility is strangely, contradictorily, invisibility. And that's what we saw today. This project started in no small part because of the undercounting of black men by the census. And that's what led Stephanie to this question: where do black men live? Invisibility in part because they're excluded from formal systems keeping track of people, and because they have to stay under the radar to avoid being criminalized. Probably everyone here knows that the availability of housing is not a scientific or a technical question, it's a political question. The buildings are there, there's enough MIT classrooms for all of us. It's not even just constructing more affordable housing stock, right? There's so much empty space every night, and we heard of some of the inventive uses of it, but many more uses are off limits. Just two more quick points. One is, you heard about the roots of this project in some ways in 2020, and quite often, the slogan of "care not cops," right, predates that time certainly, but was used during that time. There's a juxtaposition of police and the criminal justice system versus social services. And the idea is there are too many police, there are too many jails, and we need to reinvest that money in social services. The problem with that, although there's a lot of, there's certainly a good point to that, but the problem is that a lot of times the people doing the policing are the social services. It's the public housing authority with their own police, with their own surveillance cameras, with their own audio surveillance. So the project of resisting criminalization of race and class-based form of criminalization isn't just about propping up social services, but it's purging the carceral state, the criminal justice system, from social services. And then the final point I'll make is about family. The family is a site of government control in so many ways. We can think of attempting to dissolve indigenous tribal nations in part by taking away kids and putting them in boarding schools. So projects of family separation. Talk about the family police. We heard about one of the folks' experiences with the Department of Children and Families here. It's also weaponized as something of an ideal. Specifically, a white middle class in its quintessential form, cisgender and straight nuclear family ideal, to which various non-white racial groups are derogated for not living up to. But then at the same time, we see how so many policies, regulations, procedures actually get in the way of creating that family. One of the things I learned from this wonderful dissertation was that some couples actually divorced so that the woman and children could qualify for a Section 8 voucher. So the family justifies racist criminalization, but in turn, racist criminalization of certain types of people precludes the creation of families. And yet we see just how important it is for some of the folks here to create their own families in their own ways, despite everything. So I'm in awe of this project, in awe of the people who participated in it, and very much look forward to continue to be in the struggle, hopefully with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. And now on, Professor Suzanne Sandra Smith.
Thank you so much for the introduction. It is Sandra Smith. Susan is my middle name, although almost all of you will forget that and call me Susan anyway. And let me tell you, I don't like going around being called Susan Smith if you are old enough in this audience to know who that refers to. I think I'd like to start by just saying again how extraordinary this film is. Yeah, I appreciate it very much. How about this? I'll take you okay. I'd like to start, is this better? I'd like to start my comments by sharing how extraordinary I think that this film is. For a whole host of reasons, I won't go into it because I just have the 5 minutes. But one, it takes extraordinary courage to take one's dissertation material and to turn it into something like this film. It is not an easy undertaking. It's an extraordinary effort. And I think it was done masterfully. And so I just have to really give kudos to Stephanie and her team for pulling this together. It's just an extraordinary feat. At Harvard, I teach required race and racism course at the Harvard Kennedy School. Join me in the spring of 2026 if you're interested. And for that reason, I just have too much to say about what we've seen here. I would take up way more time than I'm allowed. And so I hesitate to say very much about the ways in which various modes of domination help to create the kinds of experiences that these men shared, the levels of exclusion, punishment, violence, extraction, and then erasure of the stories that led to the kind of stories that they shared. And so mostly, I think I want to wait to see what the questions are from the audience. The thing that comes up for me that is different from what I tend to teach is that we get to hear about the interior lives of these men. It is so rare to delve into what it is that Black men think about, what is going on in their lives, what they feel. To see them in community with other Black men, listening to each other, feeling each other's joys, like when he said, "I got a daughter, man," and they all kind of smiled with him, like you could tell that they wanted to hug him. They felt each other's pain. These were men who loved deeply, they hurt, they wanted things for themselves and for their family members. These are the kinds of stories that are rarely told about Black men, right? It's one of the, and this includes in social science, includes in sociology, and even in qualitative research. They get kind of squashed down to one-dimensional figures, right? Spoken about in terms of poverty solely, in terms of violence, in terms of single-parent families and their absence from it, even though some of the data shows that that's not quite the case. And so I was overwhelmed with how the humanity of these men was just kind of lifted up. You felt who they were. You wanted to hug them. You wanted them to be a part of your life. You understood who they were. And I bring this up because there's very clearly a kind of Black men's interior lives are made invisible. And that to me became so apparent. I don't want to bring this up to start any trouble, but let's go back to the election and all the conversations about what Black men thought, what these people thought, and all of the critiques about, well, one, how could they think this? And then the critiques about what they were thinking. Isn't it strange that we didn't know what black men thought? Right? How could it be that we would not know what this major demographic thought about anything, such that they would have this perspective or that perspective? So we need to do much more work like the work that Stephanie has done, right? That lifts up, reveals, because these men want to tell you. And very happy to share their viewpoints, but we don't pay attention to them in this way. And so the thing that I would love for us to have a conversation about, do Q&A about, because I'm sick of talking about deep inequalities that get reproduced over time, I want to talk about what black men think, what they feel, what they want for themselves, how they want to achieve it. Something that feels a lot more hopeful, instead of always characterizing them in ways that are negative and suggest that they're a constant problem. Right? So I will leave my remarks at that.
Thank you, Professor. And finally, Professor Chinjerai Kumenika.
What's up, y'all? I want to start out by thanking many, many hands and voices that created this really powerful film. And of course, it's not just a film. It's part of what makes it so powerful is that it's embedded in real work. So I want to thank Stephanie. I want to thank Virginia. I want to thank, I know I don't even know all the people, Steve, Joy, Corey, all the actors. I want to give a special thanks. This may never reach the people who gave their stories to Stephanie. We do this research, people give us their lives, and it's rare that it even is brought into this kind of venue. So that was really courageous for folks to express themselves in that way. And it's so powerful. I mean, a lot of my thoughts are similar to what Sandra said, is that it's amazing that I'm 52 years old and I've never seen a conversation like this as a black man. I spent my whole life around black men. Well, except in the academy, because less and less, you know what I mean? I remember, yeah, anyway, not that aggressive yet. And yet at the same time, it's even more amazing because, there's ways in which I've lived this. In my podcast, Empire City, I talk about my father's work. And, we sort of leave him at the moment when he is being surveilled by the NYPD. But what we don't talk about is later in his life, my father experienced homelessness in Newark, New Jersey. And as a result of his experience, I remember being with him when he went to the United Way after being homeless and made the case to start Isaiah House, which was a center for homeless families in Newark. I remember a young man that I mentored. I used to do the hip hop programs in Philly, after school programs, where I would, gather brothers and folks together, and we would learn how to make hip hop. And I really, how it is with young people, they would teach me after about the first day. And a young man who I had mentored years later now, he's 30 years old. I remember during the pandemic, him going through these exact housing struggles, trying to find a place, moving into a place that was horrible, so horrible that he actually wasn't sure if he supported the eviction moratorium, because he was like, I want them to evict my roommate. And me seeing him get angry and seeing him deal with the carceral system and wondering if he's gonna wind up back in it because of the anger. And so in so many ways, it's amazing that I've been around these things and they've been a part of my life, and yet I've never seen a conversation which talks about this interiority. A few other things I want to say briefly is that I think the film, Sandra said it, it's so brilliant because you see the systems. I always tell people as storytellers, we have to learn to see power at work, the systems of power at work in the lives of people. And then you have to see, when you're talking about systems in the abstract, we have to understand what that's going to mean for people and the real quality of their lives. You always have to hold those two things. And this does such an excellent job of that. You see surveillance, you see policing, you see housing, as Comrade Kianga says, you see housing under capitalism though. Right? Now they're like, oh, it's a crisis of housing. No, it's just housing under capitalism. This is what it does, as Brother Spencer was saying. You see the university as a system. I remember, I'm thinking about the story that I believe it was Wesley was the character told about, the way in which he couldn't maintain his performance, and the university policed along with it, right? So his inability to do that, the university was complicit in so many ways, not to talk about what university does in the housing space. I remember one time talking to Fred Moulton, and I said, I'm doing a project on policing. He said, most of the policing that happens in the university happens by professors. So all these systems are at work, and I think that, as someone, I'm tempted again, there's so much to say, but I do want to call attention to the fact that I paid very close attention. I've now seen this film probably, I watched it 4 times. And I paid very close attention to the systems that are being deployed in the name of safety, what they're doing, and then what's actually producing safety, because that's a trend that resonates throughout the history of Black liberation struggles. And so when you look and see, it was networks of mutual aid, families, grandmothers, right, partners, right, inclusionary zoning projects, people trying to take the best they can with those municipal systems and try to make them work for the people. That's producing safety. The actual public safety offices and institutions are producing the harm and making people vulnerable. It's very clear. And I would say, I should just say, Stephanie started us off on the right note. That's not just happening in policing. That's one of the many things that also links us with the struggle in Palestine, right? All of this happening in the name of some kind of safety. Just to begin to wrap up, as I conclude, preachers out, when they say conclusion, you're like, all right, that's the first conclusion. We're getting close. We'll be fine. I just think, again, the quality of what, Sandra talked about, the interiority, and for me, it was a moment to slow down and reflect on what does home mean, right? Where home means, you think of, again, Wesley talking about how nice it felt to be in a space and be able to experience that desire and that love, what it meant to say, I'm a father. Home was required to be a real father, right? All these things, right? You hear the character Xavier, my brother Manuel, rendered so beautifully, talking about what work meant. All the different things work meant food, work meant a future. I mean, these are ways for me to reflect on what life means and how housing is interwoven in it. So powerful. And so we're missing that. This is part of what the current architecture of public safety, the rhetoric, the narratives, they stop us from understanding those textures of life, because you just get that one-dimensional story. Again, the power of this medium is important. Stephanie talked about wanting to bring the research home in a way that's not alienating. I'm glad you said that, because we watched this film, I want to start nerding out as an academic. Oh my God, and the systems, and it's wait, hold up. This film gave us another way to engage. And lastly, I'm just going to end on this note, because I really want to, I'm anxious the best part is going to be when we all come into the conversation. But let me say this, we're in really rough times. They're relentless. It feels disorienting. And we have to build a movement. We have to build power. We have to fight power, but what's terrifying is we have to build power, because we feel like in so many of our most important struggles, we're not in power and we're really feeling that. But you know what? There are some things that we control. There's some things in our control. Let's give a shout out to the Black response, first of all. Let's give a big shout out. powerful work that's going on. I'm just learning about so much of the work that's going on. Let's give a shout out to the Heart. I've heard about that. What's called the Heart? We may not control what's going on in DC, but we damn sure can begin to take control of what's happening in our city and our municipality. So I just want to give a big shout out to all of that work. And that's what we got to do, y'all. We got to control. We can set up, systems of mutual aid, the systems about talking about how we're going to create safety, the way that this film is all part of that. Those are things in our control. That's part of our power. So let's continue to use this to get through it, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Now I want to open the floor to questions and thoughts from you. Just raise your hand and Virginia will pass around the microphone. Thank you.
First, I want to say thank you to the Black Response for the marvelous job that you all do, and also for all the actors and the ones that performed and everything. But a lot of stuff that I heard tonight, I heard back in the 1960s when I used to work and do that kind of work myself. The question that I really want to bring forward is that now the younger generation are out there repeating the path that was set before them or whichever. A lot of the black men now, what I would like a lot of them to do, and I talk to them, my nephews and my son, and they're going to go back and get your child out of that street, because there's a lot of homeless youth in that street. And that's that black generation that's coming up. And a lot of them are doing the same things that you all might have experienced. So my thing is that we still go back and save that generation, because they're right at the door. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I take this year very serious. Just want to give you, again, a huge thank you, and I truly appreciate the work everybody does in this room. I have a more detailed question. We experience the story on housing. I want to dive a little deeper into just sleep. What do you all feel the role of sleep is? Because from a spiritual sense, as someone who practices Islam, sleep is access to that soulfulness. And when it is systemically abrupted, that takes away a part of the soul. So I just wanted to hear more about when you dive deeper, what is the role of sleep and how you navigate all these moving pieces?
What a great question. Who would like to answer? Who wants to take this one?
So I need 8.5 hours to be able to do anything worthwhile. Sleep is incredibly important for all of us. I mean, I think the evidence is extraordinarily clear that the lack of it increases risks of all sorts of things, including dementia, Alzheimer's, etc., poor physical health, chronic health conditions. It also aggravates mental health concerns in ways that we should really be concerned about. So I'm not sure that there is any area of our lives that is not negatively affected by lack of sleep, and certainly homelessness would create disruptions in that. I found really profound one of the comments made by one of the men in the circle about the lack of control he felt like he had in his life because he had to rely so heavily on other people in order to get into the apartment and etc. Whether he could sleep, when he could sleep. Homelessness and being unhoused disrupts our ability to sleep in that way, but it's not the only system, if you will, that allows that. I've been in the process of writing a book about the social costs and harms of pretrial detention. And one of the things we don't pay attention to, I mean, there are lots of ways in which one's kind of health and well-being is eroded. We don't pay attention to how many times over the course of the night folks are awakened for count, right? So you're not getting any more than a couple of hours at best sleep at one time. So you keep getting your sleep disrupted. We also don't know that people are awakened between 3:30 and 4:30 in the morning, right? So what happens in that situation is that you don't get a chance to recover. Your brain doesn't get a chance to repair itself. You get much more anxious. It aggravates mental health conditions. It makes it so that you're tired and cranky, and you're surrounded by a whole bunch of other people who are also tired and cranky as well, and then fearful of what the future will hold. You're creating the conditions for all sorts of harms to take place, right? And we see these kinds of patterns in many institutions that have the effect of reducing the likelihood that people can get the kind of sleep that they need. So just a simple thing like sleep, we can think about how institutions that are particularly present in low-income communities of color do that kind of harm even on the level of just getting access to sleep. And you could think about the ways in which living in poor housing conditions can do the same, right? So think about all of the institutions that contribute to reproducing inequalities in these communities. And I will bet you there's a story about how it also shapes the ability of folks to get the sleep that they need in order to recover daily. So this is a really important thing that we should be talking about. Thank you for that question.
Just like Susan said, I think saying, I'm so sorry. I knew it was gonna happen. I think for me personally, when I look at sleep, I look at reflecting and restarting. You know, when you get those 8 hours of sleep, it's giving you a chance to reflect on how much you've done within that day. You know, they say we get 24 hours of sleep, and that's still not enough. It's still not enough at all. Like, it's so much to do in the day. It's so much you want to get accomplished. It's so much you want to achieve and go after. And it's like, you do need that sleep to just reflect on that. And also, even in the movie with some of the fellas, what they had to go through to alter their sleep. You know, sleeping in the woods, where, you know, when you're sleeping, you want to be peaceful. It's not going to be really peaceful in the woods. You may hear all types of noises and animals and creatures and stuff like that. And how important sleep is just for the human soul, just to relax and just to be aware, like, okay, I can only do so much, but my body does need to reset, it does need to repair, it does need to rewire the mechanical aspects so I could go fight another day. I could be myself for even if it's another hour, or what can I do with the time that I have left, because safe to say, sad to say, we don't know when it's our time. We don't. All we could do is just be able to thank the Most High. I'm able to get up, I'm able to go. But when that day is over, I must sleep so I can be thankful so I can do it again. You know, so for me personally, I look at sleep as a spiritual concept of just reflecting and just being aware that, okay, I lived today. Be aware that I was able to give grace, I was able to give back, I was able to show love for someone. Sometimes in certain situations, sleep for other people is just letting them know that I love you. They get a chance to go to sleep at night because you showed them love. I love you today. How powerful words are, and how the impact of those words affect on the body, affect on the soul, affect on the mind. Look at the brothers here. The fact that, you know, Quentin had to ask the key from the maintenance just to sleep in the hallway. In the projects, we all been through some type of struggle, you know, in urban communities or stuff like that, where there's all types of stuff in the hallways that shouldn't be there, but it's there, you know, and just the fact that people are not fortunate to have a place to sleep. Even for Xavier, the fact that he said, this place saved my life. I have a place to sleep every night. It's just the fact that there's a facility for me to restart and reflect without any worries. I have to worry about getting my sleep and then making sure I'm able to sleep again after I'm done what I need to do. I think sleep equals sanity. And I'm in it on that.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Right here and then here.
Well, I appreciate the entire evening, but some of the professors were mentioning like your instinct to start talking about systems and everything, and I was curious from Stephanie about I feel like we're talking to 41 people. Sometimes people are coming up, well, what trends do you see? What is this? What is that? And when watching this movie, whether you feel like those are the types of questions that you're hoping for, or if you feel like individual stories should speak more solely just in their individuality. I'm not sure if that question makes sense.
For you, Stephanie.
Yeah, I mean, when I was working on the project, I just wanted to publish just the words of the men as my dissertation. I didn't feel like I needed to add anything because they said so much. It turns out that wasn't allowed. I managed to sneak it in the appendix. But for me, yeah, it's worth seeing it, hearing their words. I just want to point out that I worked with the men themselves and crafted the narratives, and the script is a composite of narratives. So I didn't actually write anything. Those are their actual words, the lines that they spoke. And I just want to shout you out, Matt, really quickly. So Matt is the son. Jerry Wright, who, going back to Sandra's comment there, it's true that there are cycles of these things. And Jerry chained himself to the State House to get funding for group homes in Boston. And one of those group homes is the fiscal sponsor of TBR. So just the cycles and learning that.
Thank you, Terry. Another question over here?
Two things grabbed me. I love the movie, but two things that were said in the comments. One was, this is a capitalist country, and the idea of property. And just to add to what the other professor said, the most valuable property in the founding of this country was slavery. For 100 years, black men, black women were the most valuable property this country possessed in order to put itself on the map. But here we are at a point where not just we have capitalism, but we have fascism on top of that, an attempt to reify white supremacy, misogyny, homophobia, all these things being reified and reinforced with violent threats and a promise of violence if people tolerate it. So within that, this question about what are people's aspirations and desire, how are people's aspirations and desire manipulated and toyed with and fucked with in horrible ways. And including this very challenging phenomenon, they say 1/4 of the black men that voted for the fascists. So this idea of how people's strivings get messed with. And one specific thing that I think we need to confront is this idea of immigrants being pitted against black people, not just black people. People being pitted, because that's the nature of capitalism anyways, but how do we wrestle with these strivings that can take people to very bad places?
Thank you. Who would like to answer this question? I know not me.
I mean, you said a lot of interesting things, so thank you for this comment. I mean, but to kind of connect what you're saying in dialogue with what Sandra was saying about how we understand black men. I mean, I've spent a long time, being really frustrated and disappointed in a lot of my brothers and family. But I think that there's something that you really are missing. You talked about how people's aspirations are used to mess with people. And, there's a lot of, when I talk to a lot of black men, one of the things that's sometimes a divider is that, I was a hip hop artist, and hip hop, artists and a lot of my brothers, they're like very kind of like pro-capitalism, But one of the things that I realized that people have, that the kind of discourses that they're engaging with, that they do better, I think, than many of us on the progressive side, is that they speak to the alienation of, like, for example, the 9-to-5 job. You got all these websites, the men and my black men in my family, they consume different media than the media that maybe a lot of people consume. They're looking at like stuff that's like real estate. You could flip a house and you could get, but those videos always start out by saying, you are more than what you're doing right now. If you have a job, you working in the thing, you could do more. You know you're meant for more. They start with that. That's true. But, and they're like, you can do it, and they kind of have a plan. And then, you know, I talked about this, I'm like, yo, that's a scam, bro. They're like, well, what are you offering? I'm like, revolution? Yeah. Nah, son, that's it. I can feel that. You know what I mean? So I think, just to Sandra's point, this reminder to slow down and really understand why people are taking the positions that they're taking so that we can start to engage with that, I think is a really important part of our political struggle and being in community with each other. I had one other thing. There was a similar moment. There was a moment where I was on a panel with black men talking about masculinity and talking about homophobia and transphobia among black men. Now, you know, Dr. Kumanika, the professor, was like, oh, I'm gonna give it to him on this, you know what I mean? And I got up on the mic and I was like, yeah, you know, brothers are homophobic and this and that and blah, 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 queerphobic. And I went on this rant about that, right? And this one brother there said, I agree with everything you're saying, but I want you to understand that, remember, that when we grew up, and he said, I'm talking about you too. He said, the threat against people who were queer was so strong that you would be subjected to violence if people thought you were gay. So that when you see brothers expressing that, a lot of them are still wearing armor that they were put on in those conditions. And if you were incarcerated, it's even more so. There was a queer brother who was part of that. He was like, yeah, imagine if you actually are gay though. But it just was a moment where that interiority came into the conversation in ways that it often doesn't. And so I think that that's something that we have to really also think about. And I'm so thankful that this film has done that.
So I'm tempted to respond to your question with another question, in part because I don't feel like I have the answer to it. I have thoughts though, and I'm going to share those because I like to share my thoughts. I think it might be a mistake to assume that it was a kind of necessarily an attraction to Trump himself. I think there are aspects of it, what he offered that might have been. I think we need to pay as much attention to how repellent the Democratic Party has become. And maybe especially to black men, or more so than black women. I'm trying to figure out a way to capture this. So up until probably about the mid-2000s, we thought that we made a lot of progress since the 1960s because of civil rights movement, etc., all sorts of legislation that equalized things. And you could see it in some of our stats around earnings and wages and such. You see a decline in the gap between black men and white men around wages, in earnings, etc. But then we realized that we were basing these stats on non-institutionalized people. And why is that important? That's important because between 1970 and the mid-2000s, we started incarcerating a lot of people, and most of them were black. A huge percentage of black folks who weren't getting counted, don't mean me pointing at you, who weren't getting counted in these stats, right? So the most disadvantaged, the ones who were being warehoused in our nation's jails and prisons, were not a part of the stats that made it look like we were making so much progress, right? Once you counted those people, all of a sudden it wiped out the vast majority of progress we thought we made. And most of those folks that we're talking about are black men, right? So they're looking across multiple decades, across multiple parties, or both parties, and not seeing much happening. I talked to my brother, who's just a couple years younger than I am, and he's like, what's the difference? Right? One talks better than the other, but how is that fundamentally changing my life? Kamala Harris was advocating, while Attorney General in California, for policies that would imprison those same black men, right? And she embraces neoliberalism as much as anybody else, right? So this is not just about, oh, we love Trump. This is also about, we reject a party that has rejected us for the last 30 some odd years. I think we need to take that seriously. That this is not just to love him, this is also, I think, a real kind of indictment about how the Democratic Party has failed working people, and including and perhaps especially working people of color.
Thank you to our panelists. If you guys have any other questions, you can ask them after we are done, and we will have more screenings. So thank you.
Thank you, our panelists. Thank you, everyone. Before I pass it back to Stephanie, I would like to make an announcement. We have been working with the Cambridge City Council to pass a resolution to declare June 19, 2025, Juneteenth, the day of reflection on mass incarceration in the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts. We kindly ask that you please write to the City Council in support of the resolution and attend the meeting to make public comments and support. We will be sending out more details in the post-event email. Thank you in advance for your support. I will pass it over to you, Stephanie. Thank you.
I just need to find my place. I'm good. All right. Thank you all for coming out tonight. So, please help us meet the requirements of some of our funders by completing this evaluative survey. It will also go out in the post email. Okay, thank you all for your time and deep engagement with this project. I want to close by sharing some of the overarching arguments of my dissertation, which is that housing insecurity and housing transience, as experienced by low-income Black men here in Cambridge and beyond, is a politically protracted phenomenon. Now, I'll lay out my findings in these 3 things. First, we need to study the unique housing struggles of low-income African-descended men on their own, grouping them with all Black people or all men hides the specific challenges that they face at the intersection of race, class, and gender, as Professor Smith has already said. Second, housing rules, policies, program requirements often work together in ways that end up pushing low-income Black men out, whether or not that's the intention. The result is that they're often left without access to housing support. And we already know they experience bias and exclusion in the market, in the private market. And 3, because formal housing systems often fail them, low-income Black men rely heavily on friends and family, mostly low-income women, for a place to stay. And this puts a heavy and unfair burden on those women and those households that are already burdened by systems and institutions. That's the summary of my project, but I have like 355 more pages of things to say. I want to thank all of the panelists for coming out tonight and sharing their insights. Emmanuel Okeke, Professor Sandra, Susan Smith, Professor Spencer Piston, It was really interesting to see you so measured tonight. I'm not used to it. Oh. Professor Chendurai Kumika for making it all the way out here to Cambridge. If you've enjoyed the film tonight, please join us again for the housing justice specific discussion on May 29th at the main library, and share with all your friends. And finally, I want to invite Virginia over for a toast at some point. So, Virginia, I'll pass it to you.
You can say. Let's go, Virginia.
I promise this is the last thing. We made a movie. So we're gonna pass out a toast to my fellow community members. At the Black Response, we believe in building the world we wish to see. But we know that vision begins with a clear-eyed look at the world as it is. That's why we're here tonight. We're not just celebrating a film, but confronting the painful, moving, and very real stories it brings to light, so we can fuel the work ahead. Where do Black men live? Invites us into a part of Cambridge that's often overlooked. The lives, voices, and struggles of Black men navigating housing insecurity, racial bias, and systemic neglect. By centering an often invisible and vulnerable population, this film asks us to listen with our hearts. It's okay, it's okay. Sorry, I lost my... This film asks us to listen with our hearts, to sit in discomfort, and to act with urgency. Yes, these are stories rooted in Cambridge, but they echo far beyond city limits. They speak to the soul of any community grappling with the question of who gets to belong, who gets to stay, and who gets pushed out. Let's be honest. This is hard stuff. But these aren't just stories of hardship. They're stories of survival, of creativity, of hope, of Black men dreaming of and fighting for a stable place to call home. This work doesn't happen in isolation, so I must shout out our team. To Corinne Spencer, as our director and leader, your vision, patience, and eye for every detail, made this film a powerful, soul-stirring piece. You held the heart of this project with so much care. Thank you. To Joy. Joy. Joy, you've been in this from day one. Your deep awareness and handling of your positionality, your openness, your commitment to through solidarity is unmatched. And your joy, pun intended, has been a guiding light. Your spirit is infectious and your care is felt in every frame. Thank you. To Steve, who couldn't be here tonight, he raised every single penny for us to be here. We know that Steve doesn't like to be in the spotlight, but his commitment has been unwavering. He has a meticulous eye, he trusts, and shares so much solidarity, and he's deeply appreciated by us. He's truly in the fight with us. We have immense gratitude for Steve. Thank you.
And to Virginia. We all know that everything that you're experiencing here is because Virginia put together a very detailed Q2Qs with what is happening every minute of every day and assign every single task to everyone. So thank you so much to Virginia. All of this happens because of her great leadership.
Thank you. Okay, and to every one of you, our audience, our community, our comrades, thank you for being here, for listening, for feeling, and for not running away. But don't stop at watching. We invite you to take action. Support the Cambridge Community Land Trust in its work to create permanently affordable housing. Join the voucher working group, fighting to get city funds directly to those who need housing now. Keep showing up, keep speaking up, keep organizing. You've really shown up tonight, and for that, we toast to you. To community members who don't just care, but who take action, who move in solidarity, who bring the fight for justice into every room they enter. So raise your glasses. This drink is not just a celebration, it's our fuel, our recharge, our commitment to community, to courage, to a future where Black men not only live, but thrive. Cheers. Thank you for coming.
Okay, thank you all for coming. Please eat the food in the hallway so we don't have to carry it home. Have a good night.